What's up guys, Tyler here, and I'm really excited to bring you this video today. I've got a few other trainings circulating at the moment, but this one I'm most excited about. The reason being is this framework that you're about to see, that I'm about to walk you through, is an updated 2020 version of the framework that I initially released probably like 2 years ago now. It's been a little while, and it's always been updated and improved upon and tweaked, and obviously with this year, apparently campaign budget optimization, or CBO, is becoming mandatory, which has a lot of people freaking, and rightfully so. For those who've tested it quite aggressively, it can have very volatile performance. Fortunately, there are ways to control it. I'm going to share that in this. This isn't only CBO required. Reason being is because we are still finding that ad set budgets are doing better, and campaign budgets we've tested, and some do well, while for the most part some don't. So we're going to adjust when we need to, and we can still be in control of it, and there are ways I'm going to show you how to do that. But this is incorporated for both ad set budgets and campaign budgets so that everyone can learn it. So let's dive in, because things have changed and I'm really excited to share that in this video. If you have any questions towards the end, obviously comment, happy to help. I'm going to be around anyway, so comment below if there's a comment section. Wherever you're seeing this video, I'll jump in and yeah, we'll jam out about it. So let's start with stage one. Stage one's all about testing. Stage two is all about refining and scaling further, putting more money into the machine and making more money back, which is the goal. Stage three is all about rule implementation, because it's really important that we've got rules set up to control performance, obviously. And then stage four has two parts, which is scaling 1.1 and then scaling 1.2, and we'll go into the details of those as well once we get to it. So where we want to start is testing. Now, the reason this came out is because a few people have obviously asked questions quite consistently. Has it changed? Are you still following the same processes? People see more people come out with processes, and I've seen a few different frameworks or flowcharts flowing around now, which is really cool because there's a lot you can learn from it. But yes, things have changed based on how the algorithm has changed, based on the AI that Facebook obviously runs off as well, has gotten better. And so there's certain things that you want to do and certain things you don't want to do in order to maximize performance. And so now, if you've seen the past campaigns or the past trainings, they still work and still works well. It's a longer process than it needs to be. So before, it used to be there was two-stage testing processes which you could do, which works great for scaling in a sense, because you can start out running 8 different tests, and if you know your audience well enough, or you know that your copy's good or your creative's good and that it should work because your audiences are proven, it's just new angles to run with, then you can scale really quickly. I'm talking 3, 4, 5,000 a day just on testing, because you know what works, and you're really just trying to see how well it does work. And so you can test 3 or 4 different campaigns with isolating only creative variables or copy variables or both, and once again, you scale pretty quickly that way. This is a little different. This incorporates things to make CBO work best, also for your ad sets to work best, and also to accommodate either high budgets or low budgets. And let's go ahead and break it all down right now. So zooming right in, starting at step one. Step one is all about copy and creative testing. And now what we're doing is we are actually testing all things together, meaning we are testing images and we're testing copy all within the same variables. And I'm going to explain to you how we do that now, because in the past, each campaign would only house one variable, meaning that we had multiple campaigns to test multiple variables. However, it was all the same variable being tested, which always started as a creative. Now, what we're doing is every ad set stays the same as far as audiences. It might be 1% lookalike website, 1% lookalike social, 3% lookalike social, 3% lookalike website, and then a winning interest stack if you have it. If not, you just throw in a few different interests that should work. What you will notice is that these here, website stack and social stack, these are all lookalike stacks. So I'm going to break that down in a little bit too. And then what you'll see is that we have 3% and 3%. The reason why I say winning interest stack here and these are all stacks, is because one thing that's proving to be true this year and towards the end of last year is the broader you can go, the better. The days where you could narrow down really, really hard and get really good results is really gone, just because things are more expensive, and Facebook is smart enough that if you give it enough rope, it'll find the right people. That's why people see success with broad targeting as well. Once again, that always depends on the product, but broad targeting does really well. But the broader you can be with your audiences while still being somewhat refined to your ideal audience, the better the machine's going to perform for you. So that's why we do very broad audiences, but these audiences stay the same in each campaign. We usually start with 5 audiences. It might be a little more depending if we've got any other interests that we do want to test, or if we want to test our broad as well. Just depends on the client's budget and also the confidence that we have in the offer, depending on how mature the offer might be. Okay, so as you see, the audiences are the exact same, they don't change. What does change is in each campaign, there's only one copy variable being tested. Okay, you'll see that there's image, video, carousel, slideshow. Image 1 is always image 1. Okay, in image 1, it's always image 1. Image 1 is always image 1, meaning it could be an image of, let's just say, I usually use animals, let's say it's a dog. Okay, image 1 is of a dog, video 2 could be whatever the video is, but this doesn't change throughout the whole campaign. Okay, this way, you're still testing these variables. You have 4 different variables going around. One's a video, one's an image, one could be a carousel, and one could be a slideshow. You're not restricted or bound to these 4 different variables. The reason why you do all 4 is because each campaign's different, each audience is different, each offer is different, and product is different, and client is different for that matter. So it always pays to test different variables. You can even use collection ads. Collection ads can do really, really well for apparel brands. So test image, video, carousel, slideshow, because you could be surprised with what works, and at least that way you're feeding enough variety into the auction for Facebook to find the best possible results based on the different creatives that you have in circulation. So image, video, carousel, like I said, that's consistent throughout. So what is different? What's the purpose of having 3 campaigns? Campaign 1 could be more direct and say, here's my stuff, come buy it. Okay, ad 1 is going to have an image of a dog and say, here's my stuff, come buy it. Ad 2 could be a video of a dog and a cat, or this whatever else is going on in the video. Here's my stuff, come buy it. Ad 3, once again, it's just a carousel with whatever variables you throw in there to deem it your carousel ad, and the copy is going to be the same. That copy stays the same in ad 1 here, in ad 2 here, in ad 3 here, and these all share the post ID. They all share the same post ID, so that the social proof from this one is going to stack onto this one, is going to stack onto this one, etc., etc. Where the variables change is that in campaign 2, it's copy variation 2, meaning ad 1 is still going to be of the dog because that's a consistent variable that is getting tested. However, instead of saying, here's my stuff, come buy it, it'd be like, look at this cool dog wearing my stuff, here's where to buy it, right? Changes the angle, changes how you're trying to sell it, could be more solution oriented. This is like, I'm not trying to be a copywriter in this video, I'm just using it to speed through the process. And then you can go ad 2, follow the same processes, where the copy's the same as inside this campaign as this one. So it's like, look at this dog wearing this product of mine, here's where to go buy it, etc., etc. Okay, and the copy stays the same throughout all of the images. Once again, shares the same post ID to boost the social proof. You do this 3 times at least. I like to do a little bit more if you've got the budget to do so, because once again, you can scale through budgets. Okay, that kind of just sets the frame of how our testing framework looks. Hopefully that makes sense. There's a few things that are going on this page that you may have already looked at, which is, if it's a CBO, the max budget is to be the average of the total campaign budget divided by the total number of ad sets. So this number changes based on obviously how much either you or your client, if you're an agency, how much your budget your client is working with as far as testing goes. I like to set at least around a $500 to an $800 testing budget per day. With CBOs, you kind of need to. I know that can be hard for some people. I would say the bare minimum you want to be spending across these 3 campaigns is at least like $150 per campaign. I wouldn't go much lower than that. So you need to really be willing to spend to make more, or at the very least get $50 per ad set. So that means if you've got $150 or at least $30 per ad set. So honestly, if you're going to go as low as $100 per CBO, if you can avoid it, do 4 ad sets and put them all at a $25 max spend each. So at least it's getting an even distribution. But I'm not even going to get into not spending enough to even acquire customers and your standard KPIs. But ideally, in a nutshell, keep your spend at least $50 per ad set, and you're going to be happy, right? You're going to be getting sales, and it'll be far more consistent. The way that you control CBOs in your testing, because testing is all about controlling variables, right? Any scientist will tell you that it's about controlling and identifying leading variables and what works and what doesn't work, so you can either keep them or cut them depending on, what kind of results you get. The way it works with CBO, usually CBO wants full control. It's like, give us the campaigns, we're going to allocate the budget wherever we want. We can actually control that. There is that little feature in the ad set level that's going to say set minimums and maximums. And where you want to play with this tool is, if, for example, you know that you have 150, or for the purpose of it's right here, let's say you've got $250 per CBO to work with. What you know is that you have 5 ad sets, $250 budget between 5 ad sets. That means they all should, because we want control, we want this amount they spend to be completely consistent and completely controlled. So you set the max that each ad set can spend to $50. That way, out of the 5 ad sets, They all spend only $50. CBO loses its power. Your testing has full control, and yeah, it becomes even spend. It's just like a standard ad set budget. So when Facebook does the switcheroo and forces you to use CBO, you still have full control, which is fantastic. But that's where you start, and things change as we go along, which I'm going to show you as well. But that's the start of it all. As we go down further as well, so you'll see the lookalike audiences to use. So we have like website visitors 30 days, add to cart 30 days if you have that event, initiate checkout 30 days, once again if you have that event, purchase 30 days, 4% page view, which, you know, if you've seen this video, I would hope that you've seen some of my other videos which talks about the Pareto principle. We'll go into that in another time as well. There's iOS devices, purchases, and initiate checkout. Oh, cool, okay. I wasn't even sure what I was reading there. So what works really, really well, and shout out to Magix for helping me find this audience, because this one's great. I now do this on my own because it's a bit faster for me, but iOS devices, so you narrow down based on purchases, but for 2 events, so you can stack events in your audiences. So purchases plus initiate checkout for 30 days. Okay, iOS devices only is a really, really, really strong filter. I think Magic's called like high intent or high purchase intent or something like that. Anyway, do it over 30 days as long as you're spending enough. If you're not spending much, like 100, 200 bucks a day, try go like 60 or 90 days. It's important to get as much volume as possible here. Okay, if you don't have an initiate checkout event, do whatever event comes next. So for example, if you know that there's one step before they actually buy something, do that next step, because yeah, you'd rather have further to the end goal as possible that you actually want, right? So you've got 4% page view, iOS device, and then you just do the same thing with Android device. What I haven't included here, and it's probably more a typo than anything, is also the top 10% value. So we've got 4% page view, depending on the volume that your store has done, or whatever brand that you own has done, you should have a high amount of purchases. And what you can use is get the total, get your, your average order value or whatever. There's a video for it. I'm not going to go into this. Try and find the top 10% purchase value customer, basically, and create audiences around that, and they do super well as lookalikes as well. The next one is your socials. So your socials involves your Facebook, your Instagram, your video viewers, your engagers overall, people who send you messages and save your posts. Save posts is actually a really good one. Messages isn't, because it can end up with a lot of trolls. So what you want to do is, yeah, this is your lookalikes. I'm not going to go into all of them because it takes a bit of time, but these are easy to create. They're all creatable within your audiences, and yeah, they're all quite self-explanatory. Videos, obviously you need to keep populating. It's not dynamic. So keep populating those with your most recent audiences and your best performing campaigns, and they should consistently be really strong lookalike audiences for you to use. And yeah, we stack all of these together. Okay, so it creates a really powerful audience because these are all good. But when you combine them all together, they're even better, and you get cheaper CPMs, which is fantastic. And then optional as well. If budget is a huge restraint, what you can choose to do, or even if budget isn't a huge restraint and you want to test all these variables together and just give Facebook full control, still set all these up if you have the budget to do so, and then add all of your variables into here, meaning all of the copy, all of the creative, any even different headlines if you want to test. The main variables we test is obviously creative and copy. With dynamic, you can't do carousels as a dynamic variable unless you do it on their own. So maybe you might cut out carousels just to keep images and videos as different variables that you might test out. Balls in your court, but this is an optional one, and we do play with this from time to time, and dynamic creative does really well. Did even better last year, but it still works really, really well today. So that's testing in a nutshell. That's the testing phase. Really easy to understand, full control over the campaign. If you're using CBO, if you're using ad sets, it's all the same anyway. You keep the budgets even, keep the audiences separate, keep the audience one always as audience one in each campaign, so you control full variables. That way you can look at the performance differentiation of the copy at the campaign level. Then you drive into the ad set level to see how the creatives have performed, or the audiences have performed through different copy and creative, and then you can drill down and see what creative works best with what audience. Really good, really effective, really fast way to get through testing while still spending a good amount, and in the perfect world, making good money from it too. So next step, what we then do, once we've done testing, so we've moved on from testing phase, now we go, cool, here's the variables. The next step comes, what do we do? For us and our clients, what we like to do is we pull the winning audiences and creatives. There is a way you can do this with dynamic creatives too, which there is another video for that as well, because I share everything I find. You'll find that around somewhere, so go ahead and find that and you'll learn how. Then the other thing you can do is, what we do is we pull the winning audiences and we store them. So everything gets stored. Any age group that works, interest that works, creative that works, copy that works, we store all of it because all of that helps us in the future. It saves time. I found that there was a long period of time where it was constantly having to remember what audience was working, what creative was working, what worked then, what was the headline that we were using that worked with that campaign that worked really well, and you had to go back and try and find it. This saves all the hassle. I'm not going to share this. This is internal, so I don't share these two assets, and there's a lot of client information in there as well, so I don't actually share those assets. If you ever do get a hold of the templates, which as of like today, the 19th, I have not shared those assets with anyone by like one person. So if you haven't got those assets, then unfortunately I can't share that with you as of this date anyway. Then what you're going to do is move winning ads and audiences to stage 2. And there's a bit of information here. When you have new creatives, run new tests of creatives with your winning audiences. So when we come back again, so you always come back around, you're always testing. If you don't keep testing, you will find yourself caught out and in trouble very quickly because you need more creative and you haven't tested it enough. And so you might be spending $3, $4, $5, $10,000 a day at profit without having any new creatives ready to go, ready to cycle through when things work. That becomes a major issue when you want to sustain performance and you don't have any winning creative left. So you go from spending $5,000 or $10,000 a day down to $800 to $1,000 just to find new winners to then scale back up. So to save this, create a winning bank, winning creative bank, store everything in there that works, and then keep retesting new things. So when they work, you can bank them again, and that way your scaling never stops. And when you need to cycle new creatives, you go to the bank rather than having to work on new tests to find what works. Okay. Makes your life really easy. If you need any answers about that, feel free to comment below. Now, next thing. The next thing we do, so into stage 2, this is where it's changed. This used to be more granular testing and go a little bit deeper and do a bunch of granular stuff. That doesn't really work anymore. Facebook doesn't want you to be super granular. They want to maintain control, and it starts to take its, it starts to find consistency and whatnot on its own and isolates out the best performing audiences based on their auction and everything else over a period of time. So you don't want to restrict it too much, but you still want to give it the right guidance. Yeah. Once again, there's CBO issues in here. So this is somewhat scaling. So this is refine and scale, we call it. So we cut out the shit and focus on what works. And now we start putting the pedal to the metal a bit more with our budgets. So this will give you plenty of time to read this. I'm not going to sit here and read this. You will get this template at some point. If you're watching this video, you will get this training. So yeah, you'll be able to read this at some other point. But what you do need to do is remove any bad placements, any audiences, any bad ages or genders, variables before launching the campaign. Meaning if you're running 18 to 65 plus, which is never a bad option unless you know for certain that boomers aren't interested in whatever product you're selling, that's fine. Make sure you exclude anything that's obvious. But other than that, if you're really uncertain about your product or offer, about who might actually be interested in it, go broad. And then if you find that after running some tests that you wasted a lot of money on your 18 to 25 market, which can be common depending on what you're selling and what price point, then cut them out and focus on 25 plus. Keep it broad, keep it as open as possible. I find that there's always seems to be a segment of either 35 to 44 or 45 to 54. Only one of those, never both, only one of those may not do very well, but I found it doesn't perform as well by cutting them out and having 2 ad sets instead of 1, where it's 25 to 44 excluding that age, and then another one that's 65 plus. That doesn't work. Okay, it chokes out the system. It doesn't have enough room to breathe. And so by keeping it broad, keeping 25 to 65 plus, for example, all within the one ad set, it actually does better. Okay. Next part, focus on main elements. So when it comes to what you cut out, focus on the main needle movers, meaning do you cut out desktop? Do you cut out women and focus only on men? Do you cut out certain age groups? Once again, only if it makes sense to do so. Don't become too granular, which is repeated here, okay? Then what we do, we narrow down our campaign to one campaign, conversions, winners, scaling, we call it, easy, right? And then what we do is we go winning audience 1, winning audience 2, winning audience 3, depending on however many winning audiences you have, and this can really build up. You might have tested 10 different ad sets and they all do well. You're like, fuck yeah, okay, this is great, let's keep running it. And you stash all of them in there on their own, isolating down the best creative and copy combinations. And what you'll see here is what it could look like. So the red, if you remember in the first example of the test, was copy variation 2, and the blue was copy variation 1, but the creatives were the same. It was just that the copy both worked, which meant that the copy down here didn't work. Okay, that's what it tells us. And so what we want to do from that is we compile all the best copy and creative. So the image, add 1, and then copy 1, did well, add 2, copy 1, add 4, copy 1, did well, add 1, copy 2, add 3, copy 2, did well as well. So we stash all those creatives in together that are working well, okay? And then we repeat the same process here. So we keep the same post ID once again, because social proof is really starting to build now, which is fantastic, which always helps with conversions as well, adds authority to the brand and to the ads. As long as it's not all negative, and then it usually works against you. So make sure you check your comments. And then yeah, it's repeated all the way through. And we just repeat this process with any winning ads, they go in, any winning audience, they go in, and you can duplicate this out in order to scale that way, and that does work as well. Little tip, and we'll see this in step 4, I believe, of scaling stage 1. You can actually duplicate the campaign that's working and set everything to lifetime budgets, and that typically works well in your favor as well. So any questions about that, we can chat about that at another time, and I'll probably go into it in a bit more detail here. Next step. So what you'll see here is move on to the next step as soon as stage 2 is set up. So you don't wait, you don't go, cool, stage 2 complete, now let's see how it goes, and then we'll move on to stage 3. No. Stage 3 comes immediately after stage 2. You move straight on, okay? You want to look for identify leading poor performance indicators, meaning how do we know what a bad day is? This is, there's some other trainings that should be circulating about how do you identify leading indicators and poor performance and those kinds of things. A lot of people will talk about your cost per purchase being one of the only things you should set rules for. I actually set no rules on the cost per purchase level, other than really some last minute safety nets. That's like if you've spent like $80, you don't have a purchase, or you've only got like 1 purchase, then yeah, you'll turn things off. Other than that, we set things based on earlier indicators, because that's where we can really define success. Meaning if our cost per initiate checkout is way above what we're willing to accept, we know that leaves a better sense of whether or not a campaign will be successful based on the cost per initiate checkout being 2 or 3 times more expensive than what we're used to. Cost per purchase comes after that. So if we're not looking at earlier indicators, we end up spending a lot more money than we need to determine that it's a bad ad set, when we would have known that in advance if we set rules at the initiate checkout level. So now for us, we set rules on return on ad spend and initiate checkout, because purchases is only ever relevant or relative to how your initiate checkout events are going. So it's earlier in the funnel, meaning you can make decisions sooner. So when you set that rule up though, that becomes a big question, right? So you need to know, okay, now that we know that we want to turn the rule off at the initiate checkout level, we need to know when we do that, and there is a video in here about that. There should be a video circulating somewhere at some point. You will see about leading indicators and winning time curves and those kinds of things, which it's a part of the rules anyway. You'll see it at some point. I will share it around. If you're seeing this video, you'll see it. So you'll see ad set rules. So the rules that we set, only ever at the ad set level, not too granular. We used to set it at the ad level. So if you've seen one of these in the past, you've held on to an old one, well, it's now changed. We don't do ads anymore. It just became way too granular dealing with ad set performance and ad performance, to the point where we would much rather give Facebook more control. And that way, if we know that ads are shit, we can turn them off and not worry about them turning back on, because sometimes ads are just shit and they do hold performance when you want them to be switched off permanently. So that's what we do. Few rules that we do set up is midnight rule all. If the spend is greater than $5 yesterday, which are our performance campaigns, we always set it around spend so we know when to turn things off. Because with rules, obviously you can turn something off for a day, and if it's shit, it's going to keep running the next day too, even though you want it dead. So some people do this with naming conventions. You can put like, if it has an asterisk, turn it off, or if it has a // turn it off, whatever. I don't do that at all. Anyway, so what you'll see here is spend greater than $5 yesterday, turn it off. Only though if midnight shows poor results. So we do this if we know from midnight till a certain time, any ad set at all, no matter what, will be turned off at midnight the next day. We turn that off if we know that from midnight till 4 a.m, you don't make money anyway, right? You want to make sure that you're not spending money where you don't need to. From midnight till 4 a.m, it's not profitable because you're only running to the one country. For example, US, let's say from midnight till 4, you make no money or the performance is really bad. Once again, when you look at winning time curve indicators, there is a training that will explain how to tell whether or not it's a good time for you or not, even if you don't spend much or if you do spend a lot. Another video for another time. But yeah, if for example, midnight isn't good, you're not going to want to spend money there. It's a waste of money, especially if it was a performance campaign before, or it was doing well the day before. Turn it off, switch it back on in 4 hours with a rule, or whenever your peak period is, or an hour before your peak period. Turn it back on so then it can start accelerating spend and only spends during the periods that it performs best. Okay, it gives you a bit more control, and you can automate it with rules. And I know a question comes up a lot that people ask me is, do you use Magic's RevealBot or just the Facebook native tool or any other ones like Quora, something like that? I simply only ever have used Facebook native tools. I've tested Magic's, tested other tools. I don't like that I don't have full control, and Facebook has been more than adequate enough with campaigns spending as high as 10 grand a day. So honestly, I have not found a valuable reason to pay for a tool that I can do directly on Facebook that works just as well. But by all means, I'm happy to learn or be shown otherwise. Next is the winning time curve indicator. So this is purely, this is dynamic. This number changes based on each account, which is why it's important. So turn ad sets on if spend greater than $1 yesterday, but only when we know that there's an increase in performance. Otherwise, we keep things turned off until then. And this is also, if it's spent greater than $1, that's purely based on if we want to keep it running. If it's spent more than $1, or usually $5, if it's spent more than $1 or $5 yesterday, turn it back on, but turn it back on at 4 a.m. the next day, or whenever we want the event to run. That just starts the day of anything that was turned off the day before based on safety nets, those kinds of things. If that doesn't make sense, or if you want further clarification, just comment below and I'm happy to explain it, but really it should be pretty self-explanatory. Next one, all day. So if your cost per purchase is less than the KPI, turn it on. So there is a lot of times, this is where we actually use purchase rules, is based on if the purchases are less than the KPI. Same thing can be said for return on ad spend, which you'll see here as well. Sometimes they're not correlated, but you never really know. They usually are completely correlated, that your return on ad spend is above KPI because your cost per purchase is below. Sometimes you'll get high average order values and that can fix it, but once again, this is why your rules are constantly running, so that you don't have to have the argument in your head that your cost per purchase is really high, but your return on ad spend is profitable. What do? Let the machine do all the controlling for you. It just makes your life a lot easier. This is where it becomes really interesting. So leading indicator switch off. Identify what events is or are leading indicators and set rules based on accounts KPIs. So what this means is, if you know that add to cart is a leading indicator of performance, meaning if your add to cart is high, now here's the truth. Depending on what you've got set up, but it's usually the one step back from purchase, meaning initiate checkout or add to cart, just depending on how you track things, is really the leading indicator, right? How you define success is, yes, purchase and return on ad spend is fantastic and is important, but true results and true performance can be dictated by whether or not your initiate checkout cost is high or low that day, or performing normally, as far as your averages in your account goes. So keep an eye on it, have a look. I use initiate checkout for pretty much everything, but add to cart can be just as effective depending on what you run. I like initiate checkout as well, because if you're working with a brand, or if you are a brand and you sell apparel, or people add to cart multiple things, you can't actually set rules based on the unique event, at least just yet. And maybe this is where RevealBot could come in and outperform what Facebook natives can do. But the way I overcome that is with initiate checkouts. People might add multiple things to cart, but very rarely do they initiate checkout 6 or 7 times. So that number stays pretty consistent, whether I look at unique checkouts or standard checkouts. So that's just the way we make it work. But those are leading indicators. Those are what's going to tell us, is a campaign good or is it bad, etc., etc. And obviously there's different training videos for that. Once again, you should see it somewhere. You should have seen the video. I don't know when you're seeing this, but fingers crossed that there is a video I've released, because it is filmed now, about leading indicators. And yeah, I'll leave that for another time. So the next one is, it's running all day. So if the spend's greater than 2 times cost per purchase, and the KPI in the purchase is less than 1, switch it off. If the cost per purchase is greater than 2 times KPI, plus the return on ad spend below your KPI level, meaning that your cost per purchase is twice as expensive, to turn both of those off, basically. What isn't here, and this is because this speaks to that, what isn't here is basically if your initiate checkout cost is higher than X, Y, or Z, to turn it off and at different points in the day. So that is a more in-depth training that would need to come out at another time. I can't actually add that into the sheet, but that's what these two are about. The first one's identifying your peaks and your troughs in your account and understanding whether it's profitable or not profitable at that time. It has nothing to do with what you spend at different times, because Facebook typically will spend more from your 6 till 10 a.m. Regardless of your account, all based on your time zone. So be aware of that. But what you need to look at, or what you should be looking at, is controlling everything through your early indicators, and then setting rules based around that at the different times that your account says so. Another video for another time. It's quite complicated, but this is where we use the cost per purchase very broadly. This isn't saving anyone's ass. These don't usually have to kick in because we've got our initiate, checkout, or add to cart rules kicking in to save our ass if things do go bad, which inevitably with Facebook things do. So if you need any questions or if you're curious about any of those rules more specifically, feel free to drop a comment or send a message or anything like that. I'm happy to answer. I try not to hold too much back. I want to share as much as I can, and especially for the purpose of this framework, it is important to know as much as possible. Cool. Let's jump into scaling. This is where people get really excited, and it's important, but honestly, if you don't have the rest of that shit sorted, there's no point even talking about scaling. Truth be told, if you're stuck around $500 to $1,000 a day, right now on any account at all, it's usually because of one of two things. Either A, you've got problems in your funnel, which can be assessed through something like this, which is a training that I've done, which you may or may not see at different points. And that will tell you exactly what's wrong and why you can't scale and what's, all the reasons why. Or secondly, is because you just don't have rules set up. Facebook isn't going to be able to spend $500 to $1,000 a day profitably if you give it full control and without tightening up rules to overcome or to turn things off early if it's having a bad day. Because as you spend more, bad days do occur. It's inevitable. It's it's artificial intelligence. It makes mistakes, has errors. So just be aware of that. And even beyond that, even beyond the machine, these are real people. They don't have to buy your shit if they don't want to. Just because they're interested doesn't mean they want to buy it. Doesn't mean they have money available. A lot of people forget that. Anyway, this is how we go into scaling. This is how we make our clients and ourselves actually good money. So here's how it works. Scaling stage 1.1. If it's CBO, here's what you do. Minimum CBO budget is 2 times the minimum spend of all the ad sets combined. So we always set minimum spends, and then minimum ad set spend is always 2 times the average cost per purchase. Now, why do we do this? Well, let's go and geek out a little bit more about why we do it, so I can, hopefully, give you some good information and ideally not confuse you too much at all. So the way it works is minimum CBO budgets are set at 2 times the minimum spend of all the ad sets combined. And then how do you determine what the ad set spend is? Like I said, it's 2 times whatever your average cost per purchase is. Average cost per purchase is $100, or average cost per purchase is $50. You know that the minimum spend has to be $100. Then you also know that with 5 winning audiences, that's a $500 minimum total, meaning for the campaign budget amount, you want to spend $1,000. Why? Here's why. When you set up rules, your rules should be kicking in around the exact same time that your spend ends, okay? Besides, obviously, your initiate checkout is too expensive, blah, 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 blah. Your rules only ever kick in based on following this process at 2 times your cost per purchase amount, meaning that if things have turned to shit and this ad set's performing bad for a day, your rules have already turned them off before the CBO is allowed to start spending all of your money. Okay, so we set control based on how the rules work, and then with CBO, it wants to allocate it based to the best audience. But if we can control how much it spends and where it spends it based on, whether an audience is hitting KPIs or not before Facebook actually gets the control to do it, it's our way of controlling a CBO and still getting the benefit of what CBO can do. This needs more conversation, probably more explanation in total, but the way you want to look at it is this. If you know that your average cost per purchase is $50, you set the minimum spend to $100, you can set it so your rules cannot kick in for a certain CBO until it's spent at least $100, which you already know as well based on how you've set everything up. Your per ad set has to spend at least $100 for you to be happy, right? So CBO hasn't taken control yet, because usually you'll have, if you're spending $1,000 on a CBO, you can have one audience in one day have $800 sent to it and $200 spread throughout the rest, which is really, really frustrating. Setting minimums prevents that. And by preventing that, it gives you the ability to control the process. And then after it's spent that minimum of $100, CBO wants to then allocate the budget wherever. It doesn't keep it even. It might, after everything's spent 100, you might end up with another $500 because we're talking minimum CBO campaigns here. You've got $500 left to spend that it can allocate wherever it wants. Facebook's allocated good data. Your rules have kicked in to say, well, if it's not profitable, get rid of it. And now Facebook's left with, let's say, 2 out of the 5 ad sets that are performing within KPI that your rules have kept on because it's actually performing well. And now it's got another $500 to allocate to whatever best performers left. Hopefully that makes sense. Watch this again and again until it clicks, because it does make sense, at least in my head, the way I explain it, but mathematically it makes sense. Even write it down. And if you do have any more questions, once again, just comment and we can geek out about it, because it does take a bit to get used to, but it just gives you control in a system that wants to retain full control or take full control. We can still control that process. So hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, let's move on. Minimum budget, like I said, is 2x the average cost per purchase. There is no max budget. A couple of rules here that we do set is for creatives only, keep other creatives ready for rotation. So don't throw in too many, because a lot of the time Facebook just doesn't spend it anyway. So you just want to be able to maintain full control. And if you know you've got 20 creatives stored ready to be released, then you can start scaling through creatives as opposed to trying to scale through audiences and budgets and horizontal and vertical scaling. Literally just duplicate a campaign and put in 4 more of your winning creatives. That way you're spending twice as much with a bunch of different creatives in circulation. And another way to scale that isn't even talked about in here in this video is scale through retargeting. Retarget with more assets, with landing pages, with advertorials, with VSLs, with different messages and just testimonial reels on different pages. Like, there are so many ways that people aren't monetizing their bottom of funnel and middle of funnel. It's ridiculous. Focus more on that. Trust me, you can double your budgets very easily by focusing on that. Use dynamic creative and vary up your angles and you should make more money. All right, next. But yeah, so what we do, this is our scaling campaign. Like I said, if it's CBO, this is what you do. Okay. The next, what you want to do is duplicate it. Okay, you're going to duplicate this, and this becomes a lifetime budget campaign. So LTB is lifetime budget. And shout out to a few of you guys out there who have talked about lifetime budgets, because from you guys, this is where I've actually gotten the idea from. So credit where it's due. But yeah, it's worked really well. And if you're not currently using it, test out lifetime budgets. It does extremely well. Okay. But yeah, once again, it's still a test. It just does really well for us. The way I like to do it is I want to know how much I want to spend. I space it over 7 days, and then I give it 7 days to spend that amount. So if I know I want to spend $1,000 a day, I just times it by the 7 days that we're going to run it, and we'll set a $7,000 lifetime budget. The cool thing about lifetime budgets, if you don't understand how they work, is it knows how much you want to spend and when you want to spend it, but it doesn't feel obliged to spend that money in a day because it's not a daily budget. Okay, it averages it out per day and knows how much you want to spend on average per day. But if it doesn't see the events because it's all an option and it understands what your KPIs are, etc., it's just going to not spend as much that day because it's a shitty day. Kind of like how rules will help, but this one's using its own algorithm to help you out. And then it spends more on the days that are good. So instead of spending $1,000 in one day, you might spend only $200, $300, $400 because you've got rules set up as it is. And then the next day it knows it can spend up to $1,600 just to level things out. So it's going to spend more on the day that's good and less on the day that's bad. That really shouldn't need more explanation than that. But once again, it's one of those things. If you've got questions, let me know. Big explanation here. Once again, you're going to have this sheet, so you should be able to get that explanation. Lifetime budget campaign and lifetime LTB campaign must be exact match to the daily budgets campaign in scaling 1.1. Literally, like just a direct duplication. Then all you want to do is make sure you set the end date for it. To set the end date, you have to set the end date in the ad set level. Didn't put it there, but once again, that's pretty self-explanatory. Then what do? Well, when creatives fatigue from scaling campaigns, keep the ad sets running and just rotate the creatives in. As a little side note, keep the other ads in there just so you know what's kind of dead and you can be aware of it. But just turn them off. That way they're not turning back on. You don't have rules to turn them back on, or at least we don't. So if you do have rules to turn them back on, you might need to delete them so they don't turn themselves back on automatically. Then we come into scaling 1.2. So scaling 1.2 is just a few other methods that we do use. So here's the thing. People want to talk about their method as the only way to scale. And truth be told, and sorry to ruin it for everyone else, there really isn't only one way to scale. At the end of the day, all you're doing is reaching more people with the same ads, the same message, the same offer, who belong in the same audience that are likely to buy your thing. You're not just gonna, it's not like a casino where you can just put $1,000 in and expect to get $2,000 out. At the end of the day, You just need to find the right people with the right message, the right offer, the right angle, and keep spending more money on it. There is documentation from Facebook, which you can find, which I can share a link to if enough people want to see, where they say the more you spend, the more Facebook's just going to try and spend your money, and it's not going to go and be as profitable as when you're spending less money. They've literally told us that with documentation. So if you need to see that, I will share a link to that. But I think we're all very much aware of it anyway. So it will happen. Your job is just to be able to control the process as much as possible and go and have good ads going to the right people and spending a good amount of money and make sure that your numbers make sense. And that's where rules will be able to help you do that. But here's a few other strategies and methods we use to scale. It's not one size fits all. They all do work at their own time. Some work better than others, just depending on what's happening in the world of Facebook on the technical level. But I just felt it was right to share everything with you as far as what we do. Because that way you're more equipped to use more methods and you can make a whole lot more money. Because yeah, you can use a lot of this and you can use a lot of this, or you can use all three, or you can use one, or you can use none. It's entirely up to you, but they all do work at different times. And we currently still use them and draw on them whenever we need to. So the first one is just duplicating the same single audience into 3 to 4 winning creatives. So we always say 3 to 4, any less than that, and you're just not giving enough variety to Facebook. Honestly, if you don't have 3 separate, like different variables of winning creatives inside a scaling campaign, that's a problem. You want to really make sure you do have multiple variables, multiple creatives in circulation at any one time so that you don't fatigue yourself, your offer, your creative, your brand too quickly. A lot of people make this mistake, and even a lot of big spenders as well. So scaling through creatives is honestly the fastest and easiest way to scale. So make sure you keep it fresh and just keep pumping out more and more creative and copy, and you should be fine. But yeah, so this is all the same audience with one campaign, and then we'll just repeat it. So if we know we've got like 6 audiences that are rock solid, that are our best audiences, we're literally just going to duplicate this campaign 6 times. Gets a bit messy as far as like looking at 35, 400 different campaigns all within the one account. Can get messy, but it's a great way to scale, and it controls the variable. You've only got one audience, but it gives it 5 different chances to find good runs for the day. And also you'll see that we do still control it with minimums and maximums. At this point, I do see better performance with setting minimums and setting it around the 2x cost per purchase, and then because we tie rules around that as well. But hey, I've heard other people say otherwise, but at the moment, for us to be as confident as possible, to be as controlled as possible, to make as much money as possible and retain control of these campaigns, this is how we're doing it, by setting minimums and maximums. And then, like I said, yeah, so we'll just duplicate that out and we go from there. Then there's another one. What we do in one campaign, we will set winning audience 1 once again as an example. So however many winning audiences, we just duplicate via campaigns, but it's all the one audience, but we just scale through different manual bids. So what's really cool about this is, once again, this has been shared, you can do like super low manual bids and not get many sales, but you get some. But what you can do with this as well is set the minimum bid cap anywhere between 2 times CPA, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, and 5 cost per acquisition. It allows you to enter into a bunch of different auctions and find the best possible customers, and you give Facebook basically full control of find the best customer at any spend level, and then allocate the budget accordingly wherever you see best fit. Because some days 2 times CPA bids might work, and then other days 4 times might, as more of like a bully bid because you're going higher in the auction. That's very technical. If you don't understand manual bidding, maybe avoid that one, but this does work very, very, very well. And it's at lowest cost bid cap, just for those who might ask, not cost cap. However, cost cap does work if you are using that as well. Scaling 3, this is very simple. A lot of people do it, and it's like a combination of traditional scaling. Really, all you do is pull all of your winning audiences, stack them all into one campaign, and then duplicate them all once. Keep the winning creatives. Like I said, we still keep 4. You can do up to 6. Any more than 6, and I think things start to get really messy, and things don't get delivery isn't equal, and most ads do not see delivery, and that becomes a problem. So I like to do 4. Anywhere between 4 and 6, never any more than that. I really don't go beyond 6 at one time. Haven't for a long time, actually. But yeah, so what we do, if we know we've got 5 winning audiences for this example, winning audience 1 is just duplicated. Creatives are all the same across all of them, hence the color is consistent. And then winning audience 2, 3, 4, 5, we just duplicate them all once, and that way we've got 10 ad sets in there. We know what our minimum budget is based on all of the numbers you see here, and that's it. Those are our 3 main scaling methods. Some people at the moment, and what we have been testing, and it's been very mixed, so I'm not confident in putting it in here as far as a method goes, because it's just not heavily tested enough for my liking, for me to confidently stand behind it. What a few people are talking about at the moment that you could test out is single ad sets inside single campaigns with single ads, or 3 to 4 ads, and that seems to be working well, and that's just controlling the equation. Because once again, you're not letting CBO allocate your budget across multiple ad sets, but you can control that conversation, or you can control the algorithm or the campaign budget still by setting minimums and maximums. So pretty much does the same thing, and we discussed that at the very start of this video. So that's everything as a whole. You focus on the scalings. Once you've got, let's say you've gone through all the steps, you've got step 1, 2, 3, 4, or stage 1, 2, 3, 4 all set up, your rules are pumping, you're spending good money. Really, your main job then is just to work on new creatives, new audiences, new creatives, new tests. You can't go wrong. But that's pretty much it. That's the Facebook Ads 2020 playbook, updated for campaign budget optimization and ad set budgets. And this is what we're doing, following a very simple guideline, and yeah, I would say it's really quite effective, which I'm quite confident the clients could vouch for as well. But yeah, if you have any questions at all, let me know. Hopefully this was valuable, and if you have any questions and need any more information, just drop them and let's chat. All right guys, check you later.